weapon at night inside the perimeter unless you've got a Jap to show for it. Worst thing in the world. I see somebody move, I shoot at him. He shoots back. It's the worst thing that could possibly happen. And there were some undisciplined Army units where that chaos resulted.
Well, it gives your position away too, right?
Yeah, and you know, indiscriminate firing.
Did you get close to any of your men or any of your fellow officers, or did you try not to be so close to them so that if they got?
Oh yeah, we'd be very close.
You would.
Very close.
And did you lose some of your good buddies?
Yeah, sure did.
And how did you handle that?
Well, of course, one thing you do, you get pretty steeled to adversity in the human body. You know, a young human body can stand about anything. It's like eating. I can remember very well landing on Bougainville. Didn't eat, of course, couldn't eat anything the first day. Didn't eat the second day. And about third morning, I said to Cozart, my runner, Cozart, I need some food. He says, I do too, Captain. So we sat down there, we opened the open sea ration, and we're eating. This is 48 hours after we landed. Fanning flies with that hand, flies from the dead bodies, you know. So you finally eating after 48 hours, shoveling food in and fanning flies. But no, Dave, yes, you get very, very close to your people, and it's there's so many casualties that you know it just goes with the territory.
Did you come across any wounded Japanese?
Yes, and occasionally we capture. Once in a while, we capture someone, and they always wanted headquarters always wanted to interrogate. Want to get a prisoner to interrogate him, and it was frankly very difficult to get a prisoner. If you, I remember on 2 occasions where we did capture someone and tried to get him to the rear, and he was always shot trying to escape. I had my best man, Sergeant Steelman. I said, Steelman, get this guy back to regiment. They want to interrogate him. I don't want anything to happen to him. Sure enough, Steelman came back. I said, Steelman, did you get the job done? Captain, he tried to escape. I mean,
And really tried to escape.
yeah. I mean, it's but you know, it's you get war turns you into savage. It does. It makes savage out of you. Now, my operation wasn't anything like what I've seen in the movies, like that D-Day over on landing there. There's nothing like that. That would really make you a savage. But it does things to you. But you know, it's either they're going to do it to you.
But it seems to me that the worst is being where you can't see, and you know, and every little sound, or you know, in that jungle like you're talking about. I mean, it had to be just awful. I mean, you could probably never have a relaxing moment the whole time you're in there.
And you know, you get jungle rot. You'd have the rot between your toes, other tender places. I mean, and it's just, and here they want to make women, put women in the infantry. that jungle rot, I tell you that. If that wouldn't give them fits, I don't know what would.
What about malaria? Any guys come back?
Yeah, I don't remember that being being a problem. Of course, we're on Bougainville for 55 days. There might have been cases of it, but I don't remember, Dave.
So where did you go from Bougainville then?
Well, from Bougainville, we went back to Guadalcanal, trained some more, and then from there we went to Guam. And Guam, of course, that was a little different kind of a.
Show me. Let's look up. Show me where Guam is now.
Yeah, Guam's up here in the Marianas Islands.
Right. Oh yeah.
You see, we're getting close. We're getting closer to closer to Japan.
Right.
And Guam had been a protectorate of ours, and so we were going back. We were retaking our land, and it was a smaller island. It's an island like 20, maybe 22 or 3 miles long, and like 4 to 8 miles wide. So it's not that heavy, dense, swampy jungle. It's a little different. And there were some coconut groves, and there was plenty of jungle, but there are coconut groves, and there's some rolling terrain, and it's just a different, entirely different type island. And we, on that particular operation, I was aboard ship. My unit was aboard ship for 7 weeks. And the reason, so when we landed there, we were really out of shape. I mean, you talk about running across that soft sand. I thought I'd never get across it. But the reason for that was that Saipan was more heavily fortified. Saipan is also Marianas, and a different division landed in Saipan. 3rd Marine Division was in reserve for Saipan. If they were needed, we were going to land there. But it wasn't known whether we were going to be needed in Saipan for several weeks. So we would at night, we'd steam toward the shore, and then we're not needed, so the day we head back out to sea. And that went on for over 2 weeks. So we're aboard that ship for 7 weeks, and we finally landed in Guam, and that was a very, very speaking of being tiring, that really was mean going across that.
I meant to ask you, so you were in the 3rd Marine Division?
Right.
All along, even when you were at Lejeune? Or when you were at Lejeune, were you in the 3rd?
Well, no, the 3rd Marine Division was farmed. It was farmed in California.
Okay.
It was farmed in 1942 in California. So in Lejeune, we're just a no
training.
No particular unit.
And what regiment were you in?
3rd
Regiment, 3rd Division.
I was K Company, 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marine Regiment, and 3rd Marine Division. So we're K333, which I've ordered for my license plate, incidentally. I thought, God dang, I ought to get that license plate.
That would be good, yeah. So, Was it the landing similar to the one on Bougainville? Did you go in the same kind of craft?
Pretty much. A little different in that. Well, it's entirely different terrain. And Guam, there was a little more opposition on Guam than Bougainville, but Guam was not, and of course they were able, being a smaller island, there are fewer possible landing beaches, so that they don't know whether we're going to land here, or here. But Bougainville, there might have been, I don't know, there might have been 25 places where we could have landed. So my point is they're better able to defend. The smaller the island, the tougher the defense could be. On the other hand, you might say, well, if it's small, we should be able, with naval bombardment, why can't we knock out the opposition early? Well, Guam, there were several rocky high ground that came right out to the ocean, and they were able to burrow in up there, come in from behind, and they had fields of fire looking right down the beach, so they were better able, they had better terrain, better able to set up defensive positions.
You had about same thing. There was a tree line or vegetation that when you got out, you went across the sand.
Pretty much,
go about the same.
Not quite as not as dense. It was, but once you got inland, then yes, there were trees, but nothing like Bougainville. Is just all of a sudden you're in a dense jungle.
Take many casualties going across the beach?
Yes, more than at Bougainville, but not severe. That is in my unit.
Any particular things that you remember about Guam, as far as any skirmishes or anything particular?
I remember. I think the thing I remember, my most vivid memory of Guam was declared secured in 21 days. That was August of 1944. And the thing I remember most vividly about Guam was the last, and I don't remember whether the day before the island was declared secured. Incidentally, sometimes the general declares island secured when I mean, there's a lot of fighting going on. Yeah. And at Guam, there was a lot that went on after they declared it secured. But we had pushed up close to the end of the island, the one end of the island, and we had, and I would guess, I don't know, we might have been 300 yards from the end of the island, and the remaining Japanese were, of course, we were eventually going to move right to the water, and they'd have no place to go. And there were cliffs there. I mean, they were up 100, 200 feet. So they're either going to have to jump off, or surrender, or we're going to kill them. So this particular night, we knew something was coming because we could hear the sake bottles clacking. They've still got some sake in there. You can hear some strange noises, and sure enough, about, I don't remember what time it was, let's say 10 o'clock at night, they bonsai'd, and they came in with sabers. I mean, you see them in the moonlight. You see them, they're coming in, they're crazed, they're coming in. I mean, it's a kamikaze, it's a bonsai, die for the emperor and go to heaven deal. And I'll never forget that, because I was with my runner in a foxhole, and this is inside our perimeter. And as I mentioned before, we were taught never fire inside your perimeter unless you've got a body to show, for obvious reasons. I shoot this guy here, he sees shot, he fires, and that can be terrible. Anyway, they break through our lines, and there might be, I don't know how many of them there are. We happen to be in a coconut grove, and you can see these, you can hear these crazy guys yelling. You can see the sun flashing on these swords. The moon, I mean the sun, the moon, it's moonlight night. And one guy, a foxhole right next to the one I was in with my runner, there were 3 corpsmen, and this Jap fell into this foxhole, and he got up and started hacking. And the corpsman, there was not a shot fired. The corpsman, one of them had his safety on, didn't know it. Down there. But nothing happened. One of them weapon was so full of sand that it wouldn't fire, and one of them had broken it down to clean it at night, and then had a chance to put it back, put his weapon back together when night fell. So anyway, that's like 5 yards, 15, 20, 25 feet away. So we, of course, then nothing happened, and we killed him. And the corpsmen, incidentally, they were all right. They had some terrible leg wounds because he'd been hacking away at the end of the foxhole where their feet were rather than where their heads were. But that was quite an experience. Then we had another one, Jap, just almost fall right into our foxhole. Of course, we waiting there. We were able to take care of him, but he laid there all night. Boy, how they smelled. They had a different aroma. I know we didn't, no way we could smell good, but gee, Christmas they had a sweet smell. I don't know what it was.
Was it pretty easy digging foxholes, I guess, in the sand?
Yeah, for the most part. And you'd try and get enough depth so that so that if a shell landed right close, it's not gonna.
Now, up to this point in time, had you yourself been wounded at all in any of this action so far?
I had 2. I got a piece of shrapnel right where I sit down, and then I had a shell had a shell explode right close to a foxhole one night. I say close. I don't know how close, but I had a concussion and was back in the rear for about 4 days.
Was this on Guam where this happened?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was on Guam. So I had 2 minor wounds. Nothing of consequence. Nothing.
I meant to ask you too. Like after Bougainville, and when you get replacements in, how do they adapt, or how do they? I mean, do the other guys welcome in pretty well, or do they got to kind of make their own bones more or less?
Yeah, no, I think pretty much. Replacements, kids, they obviously replacement is coming from the States, and he's 18 years old, and he's green as grass, and yeah, they're glad to have him. They're glad to have him. They're happier to see the replacement than the replacement is to see them. But they're very, very, very well received.
So, what happened then? Did you finally push to those cliffs, or in Guam? I mean,
that ended it.
Oh, that was
that night.
that
That
was it.
ended it. They all bonsai'd, and I have no idea how many there were, but there were. I would say that for every 100, they did break through one fire team and cut this fire team all to pieces. 4 men, they were just butchered. But other than that, there were not many. We did not have many casualties, and there were a lot of Japanese killed that night. You know, I have no idea how many, several hundred. And it was it's a horrifying experience, but it hastened the certainly the war ended a lot Guam ended a lot quicker than it would have otherwise.
On Bougainville and on Guam, was it all Marines, or did you have some Army folks in there too?
No, all Marines. Now the Army did work with the Marine Corps on some operations,
right.
but we didn't.
No.
We didn't in those two. Yeah.
And so where did you go from Guam then?
Well, let's see. I went. That operation ended in August of '44. I had Christmas of '44 in Evansville.
Yeah.
God, that's nice.
Oh.
I went home I went back on leave. I didn't go right from Guam. I guess we went back to Guadalcanal, and then home from Guadalcanal. I went home on I'd been over 28 months, and I went home on 30-day leave. And the idea was I was going back, and they said at the time there was a shortage of lieutenants and captains, Marines in the Pacific. Anyway, I got home and the orders were changed, and I went to, instead of going back over, I went to Camp Pendleton. Needless to say, I'm glad I did, because the next operation was Iwo Jima, and that was terrible, much worse than what I was in.
Now, I noticed that you received a Navy Cross. What was that?
Well, that was for action on Bougainville, and it was a bad day that I can I'll tell you, it was such a bad day I can hardly remember all that happened. But we had a rifle company, not my company, another company that was shot up pretty bad, and the commanding officer was wounded. The exec, who was my best friend, was killed. Two leaders were killed, and one other was wounded, and they were down to where they didn't have any leadership at all. And I was ordered to move over and take command of that company, L Company. And you know, the Navy, and you'd probably find the Air Force, if your unit does a good job, the commanding officer is oftentimes recognized. I know the Navy is really that way. And in this particular case, my citation indicates that I was a hero, but I frankly think my unit did an excellent job, and I got the credit for it. It was not I can't say I killed so many of the enemy like typical citation reads. It was a dark, horrible day in the middle of the jungle, and things worked out, I guess. My commanding officer seemed to think that things worked out pretty well.
So when you went, okay, so you how did you get the news? Okay, you got to go over and take over for these.
Well,
guys.
I got it on hooked in on the wire. You know, I told you about the communications. And what we do with that wire, we'd hook up every hour on the hour or on the half hour, and I'd get orders from the rear, and it was very heavy jungle, so I have no idea how far back the colonel was, but I got word that what had happened to L Company, and I was told to move over there, take command of L Company. And so one of my officers, my exec had been shot, had been hurt, so one of my platoon leaders took command of K Company, and I moved over to L Company. And I had no idea what was going on over there. I knew they were undergoing heavier fire than we'd had. I knew from, well, I guess mostly from the sound, and also we were told there was more opposition over there. We knew that as we moved forward that day. But that's how I got word, was by hooking onto the wire and hearing from the colonel that I was to move over.
So how far away was it from how far did you have to go to get there?
Probably, oh goodness, if it was 200 yards, I'd be surprised, but I had no way of knowing. It was just, and to find it, to get over there was.
Did you have any of your guys go with you when you went over there?
Yeah, I had two runners. And
okay, tell me what runners do.
Well, runners, as the name implies, he's a runner to deliver. You know, I want to get word up to Railsback to move up and take that ridge, and so I send Cozart over there. Cozart, tell Rails to move up that line and take that ridge. Well, in the middle of the jungle, he really wasn't much of a runner, because where is he going to run or walk or get there? But that's pretty much what he does.
And
but
you would choose who the runners would be?
Yeah, they were.
And what would you be looking for in a guy to be a runner?
Well, we had, for the most part, in the Marine Corps back then, we didn't have any dogs. We didn't have a yard bird. We had very few of them. Let me put it that way. So I wouldn't need any. I wouldn't need a Phi Beta Kappa, but I'd want somebody solid, somebody steady, and we had a lot of steady, solid guys. But runner, he wasn't really a runner on Bougainville.
So when you guys get over there, what do you see?
Chaos.
And I mean,
the gunnery sergeant, something had happened to him. I never did find out what happened to him. Shot. I guess he was shot. Although you'd occasionally get in combat. You occasionally get someone who's in a position of command who couldn't handle it, and I think they had a little of that too. So it's just a matter of trying to
so
make sure there's no chaos, and make sure that well, they've got a lot of casualties, and make sure that they're getting their casualties brought to the rear, and they're getting ammunition, and they'd had a firefight, and they're low on ammunition, so we doing our best to distribute ammunition and really just to kind of calm things down. And we'd had a little trouble getting there. Matter of fact, one of my runners got shot, and it was just a bad day. And Now my citation reads like I was a hero, but things worked out. I should have brought that. You could read that, and then you can see what a hero I was.
Well, I do want to get that. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd like to see it because I want to make copies and things like that. But so when you get there, does someone that's there, do they fill you in somewhat on what's been going on?
Yeah.